This is really special to me. This is a culmination of my life's work and the choice I made to come be a part of Worthington Industries, to share this with all of you, to make our company stronger. Here's what I want you to take away. I want you to understand how we as an organization define diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's going to be important. There are lots of dictionary definitions. If we asked everyone in this room, everyone would probably have a slightly different, albeit similar, definition of the words diversity and inclusion. But as an organization, for us to progress effectively, we have to use the same definition. So we'll talk through that. We're also going to identify some common myths about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're also going to discover our dimensions of diversity and those of others. I'm going to ask you to be vulnerable. I'm going to ask you to be honest. So if you are like me and you have a touch of the old anxiety, I want you to be prepared now that that question is going to come, all right? I'm going to ask you within the confines of your table groups to be vulnerable, to be honest, to be open and listen to others as well. We're also going to talk about how we win with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then we're going to identify the actions that we want to take on our own journeys of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This journey that we talk about, everyone's not starting at the same place. Some of you may have more of an understanding, may have more involvement. You've seen this work before. You've done some of this work before. You live holistically within your dimensions of diversity, and others may just be starting out. So recognizing that collectively as we move forward, it's going to require each of us individually to drive our own DEI journey. So, we ready to get started? Let's do it. There we go. These are the questions that are on your worksheet, just so you have a reference. This is for my visual learners up here. So if you're a visual learner, PowerPoint's going to make perfect sense to you because it's going to seem like it's all over the place. If you're an auditory learner, stick with me, all right? And if you're a kinetic learner like I am, doodle away. It's not going to hurt my feelings. Draw pictures, stick art, do whatever you got to do to keep your hands busy so your mind can work effectively, all right? So let's go. This is our definition of diversity at Worthington Industries. Diversity is a fact, full stop. Everyone in this room is diverse in some way. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what city you came from. Everyone in this room has some dimension of diversity to them. That's the first thing that we need to assess. Continue. It is anything that makes us unique as human beings. That's how broad the definition of diversity really is. It's not this finite group, and we'll get into the myths in a minute. It's not just some people are diverse and others aren't. Everyone is diverse. So diversity is a fact. We good with this? I hear some yeses, I see some nods, I like it. My favorite quote my mother used to tell me as a kid when I would always talk about how unique and special I was, she would humble me real quick. She'd say, remember, you are unique, just like everybody else. When you're a kid and you think your Lego building is the most awesome Lego building anyone has ever made, it's really humbling when your mom tells you that. If you have a Spanish mother, you know exactly what I am talking about. Let's keep going. Inclusion is the action based on the fact. Inclusion is an action word. Inclusion is not a descriptor. Inclusion requires action. It is recognizing and leveraging diversity to its fullest potential to make our company stronger. You are all here so that we can leverage your collective abilities together for the success of our organization. The conference isn't called Learn and Go Home. It's called Learn and there we go. So the expectation is that you take what you get here, you sink it down deep, you let it grow, and you say, how do I spread it out to everybody? Inclusion works the same way. Inclusion says you now have an understanding of what diversity means. Now, what are you going to do with it? I know it's hard to see the graphic, but I just thought it was really cool. You've got a group of workers here, because I know the lights can make it difficult, all raising their hand into one fist. The Pokeball was just a shout out to Sarah Sandoval, who's not here. We thought it was just a really cool image, but you get the point. All these workers are working together towards one common goal. Our goal at Worthington Industries is the same. Whether you work in a plant, whether you work in the back office, the goal should be for us to perform to the best of our abilities so that Worthington Industries can perform to the best of its abilities. Inclusion is one way that we do that. Now, there are 3 basic principles of inclusion. If you take nothing else away about how to actually do this, just remember this. Make it simple, make it natural, and make sure it has an impact. Simple, natural, impact. We're going to get into some of these myths here in a little bit, and we're going to talk about some of the things that happen to us when we try to go on this journey as an individual or an organization that get in the way. And I will be honest with you, sometimes the biggest obstacle that gets in the way is us. It's ourselves. We start talking about what we can't do or why something might not work. But when it comes to being inclusive, the root of inclusion is an act of kindness. And kindness is rooted in doing for others with no expectation of return. Starting to sound a lot like our philosophy, isn't it? Treating people the way we would want to be treated. Putting people first. Respect in the workplace. These are all things that you've heard before, right? Yeah. So we're not talking about anything new. So remember, simple, natural, impactful. We can take that away, right? All right. So let's get into some of these myths. Probably wondering why this ladder is here. So this ladder is not any old ladder. It's here to help me demonstrate what happens when we start to put these myths and obstacles in our way. So one of the first myths is that diversity only applies to ethnicity and gender. Now, we could probably still climb this ladder if we absolutely needed to, right? Even though that rung is missing. But this myth that diversity is only ethnicity and gender is a construct that we've built ourselves. And I'm going to prove it to you in just a little bit when we get into a group activity that we're going to do. But remember what I told you just a few minutes ago. Raise your hand if you are in this room, if you are a diverse individual. Raise your hand. I should see everybody's hand up. There you go. Because we said that who was diverse? Louder. There we go. Everybody is diverse. I'm going to prove it to you. That worksheet that you have on your table, turn it over. Excuse me. This is called a diversity wheel. Now, in a little bit, we're going to come back to this wheel. But I wanted you to have a moment to get your wheels turning, to get your mind working. All right? This is called a diversity wheel. When you look at this wheel, if diversity was just ethnicity and gender, it'd probably look a lot different, right? What are some of the things you see on there? Just shout them out. What do you see on there? Culture. What else? Age. Habits. Learning style. Education. These are all dimensions of diversity. I don't care if we had a room full of twins. We got a set in here. There's a set of twins. I had a whole conversation with one yesterday and thought it was the other one. Nobody told me. This is what happens. Hi, Laura. If it was just ethnicity and gender, we wouldn't be having this conversation, would we? But when we look at this ladder, we say, okay, well, I could maybe throw a leg up there if I absolutely have to. But see, the problem gets compounded because then we add in another myth. We start telling ourselves that Oh, well, I recognize diversity, so that's enough. Starting to get a little more complicated, right? And so now we look at this ladder and say, okay, well, maybe in my younger days, I could have hopped up there and still got it. But this is looking questionable. So what happens is we start to back away. We start to say, yeah, that's not a ladder I want to climb. This ladder might cause me a problem. I can't get up that high to get started. Whatever will I do? And then we compound it with a third myth, that DEI is great, but it doesn't help a business win. We start hearing things like diversity, equity, and inclusion doesn't add to the bottom line, that it's a nice to have, that it's important, but it's not going to drive our business forward to new heights. When the truth is, when we start breaking down these myths, all we've done is convinced ourselves that we can no longer use this ladder. So let's put it on the back burner. We'll come back and try to address it later. There are other business pressing needs that we have to deal with. This isn't important right now. And all we've done is let others, or in some cases ourselves, convince us that DEI is too difficult. It's not a natural thing. It doesn't have a place in business. Why are we having this conversation? Can't we just get back to work? Why are we talking about our hiring practices? Why are we talking about succession planning? Why are we talking about the approach that we take to learning and development? And in the room, in the back of the room, is the talent team and the DEI team literally shedding tears. Because we're saying we're fighting for the same goal. We want the same thing as you. We want you to be successful. Our success is rooted in your success. We can help you if you just give us a chance. But we've allowed others to convince us that this is the only ladder that we have to use. So let's get into this a little bit deeper. Because the question then becomes, okay, well, if this ladder's not going to work, what am I going to do? We flip it. So, unfortunately, people don't usually see beyond their lack of creativity. Now, it's not as high as it initially was, but can we climb this now? We can get part of the way up, can't we? Yeah, so let's talk through what this looks like. Diversity is more than ethnicity and gender. So when we flip the ladder over and say, I don't care about the rungs that you've taken from me or that I allowed myself to take unknowingly, I'm going to forge my own path. I'm going to turn this ladder over. I'm going to get as high as I can. And when I get to that third rung, I'll figure out how to get some more rungs. The first step in that is recognizing that there is no singular interpretation of diversity. Now, there's a Worthington Industries definition, but how we interpret that as individuals, as table groups, as teams, as leaders is different. Because when we look around at our group, we may say, you know what? I need somebody that has a specific educational background for this role. That's a dimension of diversity. We may look around the room and say, you know what? When I go into my team meeting, I don't have anybody who's experienced this life. I don't have anybody from this background. I don't have anyone from this gender identity. Maybe I should go and find that. Maybe I should find that. Maybe as I'm filling a role, an open spot on my team, maybe I'll bring in someone like a Cassidy Burt to say, Cassidy, will you help me on my interview process? I want my candidates to meet someone diverse. Would you be willing to do that for me? Awesome. Cassidy says she would do it. Sign her up. Maybe you say to yourself, we've got this great project. Whose perspective would it be good to have on this team? Maybe I need somebody like a Patrick Walker from the innovation team who's mentoring this table group right here. Maybe I need somebody like him to come in and just give me a different set of eyes. Help me through a conversation. Help us figure this out. Maybe the DEI guy, as he's learning Worthington Industries, would say, okay, we've got to put together a 3-year roadmap for what DEI looks like here at Worthington Industries. Who should we bring to the table? Okay, let's bring talent management to the table and their representatives. Let's bring the HR business partners to the table. Let's bring the learning team. Let's bring some people who have floor experience, like our host, Sean. Where is Sean? Did he disappear? There he is, right back there. We'll bring him to the table. We'll bring somebody who loves to think big picture and sees the whole mural instead of just this 8x12 and ask Adam Bradshaw to attend. We'll ask our recruiting leader, Ashley Snyder, to come in. We'll ask all of these people to get around the table, and then we'll ask someone else to facilitate the conversation. So let's go get a Shelley Simmons-Taylor. Let's go get a Patrick Walker and say, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. I got all the diversity around the room. Can you help me make it inclusive? So when you think about diversity in those terms, beyond ethnicity and gender, are you starting to see the power that it can give you? Hopefully you are. And I know this is a lot to take in 25-ish minutes or so. It's going to take a minute to sink down, and that's okay. But you're starting to see that we've already dispelled that first myth. That first myth is dead. Gender and ethnicity is not the sole makeup of what it means to be diverse. All right? So, I'm going to ask you to do a table group activity. It's 2 parts. So we'll do the first part quietly to ourselves, and then I'll come back, bring you back together real quick, and I'll give you instructions for part 2. All right? So here's the first thing I'd like you to do. Grab your worksheet. We want to be looking at our diversity wheel. And I want you to take 60 seconds. Don't overthink this. Take 60 seconds to think about what dimensions of diversity are impacting you right now in this moment. Now, before you go off and start circling things, let me explain what I mean. Oftentimes when I do an exercise like this, everybody thinks of what's negatively impacting them, what's stressing them out, what's bothering them, what's causing them consternation. That's not what I want you to do. Impact can be positive or negative. Maybe there's something that's making you super happy. Maybe you're glad to be in this room for the first time. Maybe you love your table group. Maybe you're looking forward to taking a picture with Andy. Who knows? It could be, whatever. But I say that to say, don't just focus on what's negatively impacting you. It can be negative, neutral, positive, all right? 60 seconds, go. Now, before I send you off into your table groups, I want you to take another quiet 60 seconds, no music, I'll time it. Another quiet 60 seconds, and I want you to think to yourself why you chose what you chose. Don't share it with anybody yet. We're going to get into some open dialogue here in just a moment. Take another 60 seconds just to think about why did you choose what you chose? 60 seconds isn't a lot of time. You had to make some clutch decisions real fast. So why did you choose the things that you chose? All right, so you got your thoughts lined up? All right, here's the moment of truth. This is where I'm going to ask you to be vulnerable and to be honest. I'm going to ask for vulnerability because I'm going to ask you to turn inward to your table groups and share at least one. You can share more than one if you'd like, but I'm going to ask you to share at least one thing that you chose and the why behind it. The why behind it is where the honesty comes in. This is your free space. No one's recording. Mentors aren't taking notes. This is your opportunity to be as honest and as raw as you would like to be. Whether it's something super happy and you want your table group to be excited with you, or whether it's something that's weighing on you and you're not sure how you're going to get through it, so you want to take a few minutes of your table time to see if maybe anybody has any ideas that can help you. Does that seem fair, what I'm asking you for? Can we commit to this? All right. Here's the only thing that we're going to do. I'm going to ask our support team, the talent management team, and these lovely folks, we'll just be migrating through the room, just listening. Just listening. We're not going to interject. We're not going to interrupt. We're just listening. And if you feel like you need somebody to come over and help you in your discussion, they're going to let me know, and I'll come over and find out how I can help your table group. Again, does that sound fair? All right, then that's what we'll do. So you have 15 minutes starting now. All right. How'd it go? All right. Now, to protect your anonymity, because what we discuss in this session here, what you've discussed at your table groups about your dimensions of diversity, what's impacting you, what's not, that stays in this room. So when you go back and you talk about learn and lead, and hopefully you feel like this was a great part of the day, but when you go back and talk about it, you can share any part that you might like, but you cannot share the stories of other people. You can share your own, but it is not our individual place to share another person's story. So to protect your anonymity, as we were walking through the room, I had some folks listening for things that they might hear. They're not going to say what table they heard it from. They're not going to say who said it. They're just going to share some concepts, all right? So Jordan, why don't you go first? Tell me what you heard as you were walking through the room.
Thanks, Adrian. So we mentioned before we started talking that we were going to probably have some vulnerable moments, right? And within probably 2 or 3 minutes of walking around the room, I got to admit, I was pretty shaken. In the sense that, like, we are all people, right? And as soon as the discussion started, there were people that are sharing some very, like, impactful stuff. You hear it now, right? That I'm welling up. I felt moved and thankful. So I'm going to pass it off because that's enough for me.
Ash, what about you?
So first of all, thank you for welcoming me this week. This is day 3, so I appreciate that. And then secondly, thank you for being so vulnerable, right, and embracing that. I heard a lot of things, a lot of great things, just the way communication styles are different, right? If you think within a team, how the positive impacts you can create by just being aware and seeing that. And the biggest thing, though, is really, maybe heard that twice, maybe even 3 times I heard ... and that's been so hard for me, right? That verbatim right there, that makes me think if that was, someone on my team, right? Or someone that I work with closely even, and something that weighs so heavily on them, and I would not even realize what that is, right? I think that spoke to me the most, for sure. And I had, again, where's Jordan at? I had that same moment of like, damn, right? That's cool that we can speak to that, right? That's cool that we can share that. So thank you again for just letting us walk by, listen in, and being vulnerable.
I appreciate it. I lost her. Where'd she go?
Me?
Yes. Oh, you're in the light.
Oh, sorry.
Klingler was right. Those are bright. Man, all right.
I want to talk about kind of something that I saw, and I actually had to take a break because I was about to cry. I'm a big talker, and just the sight of at every table, at least 4 to 5 people truly just making eye contact, listening to whoever was sharing, I think was so impactful, because how little do we get to experience that in our day-to-day. And as a talker, like, that's something that I admired and will strive to be better about with my team, like providing the space to just listen to people. That was just something really cool that I saw, not so much heard, and learned from and grew myself just the same.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Sean?
Thanks, Adrian. Yeah, I certainly heard a lot of very personal and vulnerable things from the tables I walked around, but I also heard a lot of relationships between what we saw on the wheel and how this relates to our company, our business, the business aspects of what you see up here. I heard a lot of talk about strategy in terms of hiring and recruiting and engagement, learning and development, things that not only we focus on, but many of you as managers and as employees here, but also concerns about things like tenure. How do we bring, our workforce right now is predominantly millennial here at Worthington in that age group. How do we bring that generation and teach them what has been passed down from our more senior employees, and how do we keep that going, and how do we train them not just on machines or equipment, how do we make them feel welcome and have the experience that kept us here for 30 or 40 years, as some people know people, or some of you might be those people. So it's just a very interesting discussion to hear people think about how can we think about this in the context of helping our company grow?
For sure. Thank you. It's not easy to do what we just did. And for the thousands of times that I have done this, for the thousands of individuals who have gone through this or a similar exercise with me, it's not easy. It's not easy to ask people to be vulnerable with a group of folks that they may or may not have just met within the last 24 hours and say, talk about what's on your mind and heart. It's not. But you did it. You were inclusive in that moment. You took the action. So we've already dispelled myth one that diversity is only ethnicity and gender. So we got solid footing down here right now. You just took care of myth two in action. It is an action word. Every one of us is responsible for it. You just proved that you could do it. Now, to make this a little bit easier for you, because remember, it's an action, it doesn't stop. I want you to be able to go back and open up these types of lanes of conversations for the people around you, for your team, for the people in your personal circle, in your professional circle. Open up these conversations. To do that, we went ahead and produced the same wheel that you have on your paper. We produced them as stickers for you. So while we're all out at our breakout sessions, Sophia and Cassidy are going to make sure, Sophia wave, hi. She took care of all of this and got these last night at 7 o'clock when they were ready. So round of applause for her, please. Thank you. People are working hard. So you're gonna each get one of these. Put it in a prominent place. Put it somewhere where you're going to remember the next time you're in a change story meeting, the next time you're in a team meeting, the next time you're having a discussion with an employee or a colleague, that you have this here in front of you to remind you that everybody is diverse and we are all responsible for making the action of inclusion come to life at Worthington Industries. Can you do that for me? Thank you. I wasn't convinced the first time. So yes, Andy might be responsible as our CEO. Not this Andy, Andy Rose. He might be responsible as our CEO. But Andy and I are equally responsible in our job functions for this as well. Cassidy is. Jen is. SB is. Mike is. Thank you, Mike, by the way. I have put a lot on them to make this presentation work, and they have been phenomenal. So I just want to make sure we recognize them. But let's keep going. So, what are some of the benefits of creating an inclusive environment? Well, we already know these immediate benefits. Inclusive teams are more productive and profitable. How? Because they don't all think the same. They don't all come up with the same idea. They have differing perspectives on life, so they're able to figure out new ideas and innovate or ideate faster than a team who is comprised of just one certain group of people that all have the same skill sets and abilities. Diverse teams, when they are empowered, that's the key. Diverse teams, when they are empowered, are more profitable and more productive than teams who are not as diverse. That is statistically proven. That is straight up business. So for all my business leaders in here, you want to know how diversity adds to your bottom line? put together a diverse team, empower them to do what they do, and watch the results come in. I guarantee it. I can do that because it's been proven. They're going to ideate faster. They're going to promote new ideas. They're going to be sitting around the table and say, you know what? We haven't heard from this person. What do you think about this idea? Oh, wait. This person's not here. Before we make a final decision, we should probably find out what they think. And what's going to happen is the entire group is then going to start to think, okay, here's what I'm working on. What would this person say? What would this person think? Okay, I got an idea how I want to put this together. Now let me go confirm with some others. And the idea came faster. The retooling came faster. The next version, the next iteration comes faster and faster and faster until we have an entirely new way of doing business that gets us to profitability quicker. Now, does anybody not want to get to profitability quicker? You can tell me, it's okay. Anybody want to slow down profitability? Anybody want to ease up on the profit sharing checks? Ease up on the record performing quarters that we talked about? No? Why not? Be honest. Tell me why not. Say it again. That's what we're here for. That's the whole point. If we're talking about slowing down profitability, then there's no reason for us to be here talking about how we learn and then go lead, right? Inclusion is an action word. So now not only do we have a solid base, we can start to climb. We're here now. What are some benefits over time? Safety. Who works in a plant facility here? Hands. Safety on your mind? Always. Now, what if I told you that psychological safety can play a role in reducing the number of potential incidents or darts in your locations? You probably say, how? I just got to spend some time a couple of weeks ago at Westerville for their profit sharing meetings. Crazily enough, I went to all 3 shifts. It was a really long day. I have a new appreciation for what some of y'all go through. That was a rough day. Up at 4, didn't get home after the last one until almost 7. That was a long day, but it was worth it. And in every one of those profit sharing meetings, when we got to the end, the one thing they wanted to talk about was safety. And they talked about how safety was trending in that location. But see, there's another type of safety we don't always think about, and that's psychological safety. So when we talk about psychological safety, we're talking about that place in your brain that controls what you're able to focus on. What do I mean? How many of you had breakfast this morning? Show of hands. Did you eat anything for breakfast this morning? Some of you yes, some of you no. How many of you had at least a drink of water, coffee, tea, something or other? Excuse me. Was there ever a question that when you woke up this morning, you would struggle to find something to eat? Was there a question that you'd struggle to find something to drink? No. When you woke up this morning, was there shelter over your head? So you woke up this morning and you knew that you had the basic needs fulfilled. You had food, shelter, and water. And you could go about your day and function, right? Well, in the same place, and it's right back here, right behind this little knot on my head, in that same place right back there in your brain where that trigger that when you wake up in the morning says, do I have food, shelter, and water? We do? Great, let's go. In the same spot in your brain is the same place where your brain says, when I walk into this sea of people, will I be accepted? Will I be judged for my appearance or how I identify? Do I feel like I belong with these people? Am I safe? If your brain does not feel like you are safe in the environment that you're in, all kind of chemical responses trigger off. And I'm not going to get in the science class right now because I could and go full nerd, but we won't do that. It makes me happy. But in the same spot in your brain that says food, shelter, water, check, let's go, your brain is saying, am I safe? Do I belong? Can I function here? And if it can't, your brain starts shooting out all these chemical responses that you're always looking over your shoulder. You're always watching, which means that you're not focused on what? Not focused on the task in front of you, not focused on your job. What happens when we're not focused on the task in front of us or our job? What could happen? Injury, accidents, mistakes. And we're saying it nicely. Somebody could get really messed up, right? It could potentially be career ending, right? It works the same way. So when I tell you that psychological safety exists in the same place in your brain as the need for food, shelter, and water, what we're really saying is if I can't come to work and know that I'm not going to be judged, that I'm not going to be excluded, that people aren't going to look at me differently because of how I choose to identify or how I show up, that I'm never going to be able to give you my best performance. So think about that. When you're interacting with those in your respective work locations, think about how the role of psychological safety provides an opportunity for employees to give their best work. Start to have those conversations. Do you feel like you belong? Are you getting what you need from us? How can we help? How do we make our culture more inclusive? How do we make it more open? How do we make it so that people want to come work for us because of the culture that we've built for everybody? You still with me? This is the hierarchy. Diversity requires action to become inclusion. Inclusion leads to a sense of belonging. Sense of belonging promotes psychological safety. And if I am safe, if I belong, if I feel included in the diverse environment that we have created, the end result is I can give you the best performance I'm capable of. For those of you that lead teams, your goal is to get what out of your folks? I heard you say it. Say it louder for me. The best. They need your help to get there. Colleagues, you want the best out of yourself, you want the best out of your team. They're going to need your help to get there. And you now have a head start on the game that we're trying to build. I'm just giving you another tool for you to leverage. Let's keep going. So how does DEI help a company win more? At Worthington Industries, we have 4 pillars as a part of our DEI strategy. The first is our workforce, and we'll get into more of these in just a second. The second is the actual workplace, our culture and our environment. The third is how we show up in the community. And that is not just the community of Worthington, Ohio. That is all the communities in which we live and work. And the fourth are our partners or our suppliers. Those are the 4 pillars of our strategy. That is the basis of our differences make us better. So what does this mean for all of us? When we talk about workforce, what we're really saying is we want the best in the industry recruiting practices rooted in DEI. So that might mean that we have to go to different places. That might mean we have to go down to Ole Miss, Andy. That might mean that we have to go to Central State. That might mean that we have to go on military campuses and work with their veterans who are transitioning to civilian life. We might have to do all of that. But that's what we mean. Diversify where we find the talent, diversify how we identify top talent, so that when we come back to this room, hey, maybe we need 2 rooms, who knows? The table gets bigger. Like Kathy said, the table gets bigger. There's more seats at the table. Nobody's losing a seat. We adding seats. We do that through our workforce. That only works if we create a culture that allows people to feel like they belong, that allows people to come to work and feel like they have the same opportunity as anyone else to advance their career, to be one of those stories that 25 years from now, they're telling folks on their last day, hey, I'm retiring. I might come back as the consultant, but I'm going to go hang out on my boat with my wife. I put my years in. I put my time in. I'm out. I expect to see all of you here be able to do the same thing one day. That's a real sense of belonging. When we talk about the community, we got to participate. We got to show up. We're working on projects. If you're outside of the Worthington area, we're actually working on a pilot project right now to heat map all of the nonprofit and volunteer opportunities that exist within a 40-minute radius of your area. So that when you come to us and say, well, how can we get involved? Hey, go check out this heat map. There's a whole list of places you can get involved at. Make it easy for you. And then lastly, our supplier diversity program. Now, steel is steel, and it comes from a handful of places, right? But think about all the other things that we spend money on in the course of a day. Is there an opportunity to work with a diverse vendor? Well, remember, when we say diverse vendor, it's not just gender and ethnicity. There are veteran-owned businesses. There are LGBTQ-owned businesses. There are businesses owned by those with both visible and invisible disabilities. So when we think about the little things we do, hey, I'm going to buy lunch for my team. Hey, can we think about maybe supporting a diverse vendor? Hey, I want to order this supplier, this piece of equipment, or this. Is there a diverse supplier we could get it from? That fosters loyalty. That gives them an opportunity to improve their business, but also allows Worthington Industries to track how we're supporting other businesses and giving them the opportunity to grow along with us. These are our 4 pillars. They may be on a worksheet near you. Hint, hint. If you didn't already write them down, they may be there for you. We've now flipped our ladder. Instead of starting from a place where there are gaps that we have to fight to overcome, think about what you've done today. You now have awareness. You recognize that diversity is a fact and inclusion is an action-based word. We all agree on that, right? Awesome. You also now have more of an education. The rest is up to you. This is the start. The next step on the journey is, how do you want to self-educate to learn more? Some of you may want to dive right in. Some of you may have a million questions that we'll get to in the breakout sessions. That's fine. But you direct your self-education as we go forward, and we'll be there to support you in your journey. Ask for help. It's not enough to stay aware. It's not enough to get your DEI facts from Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok. They're great, but you got to go deeper. We've also done some self-discovery. You were vulnerable. You were honest. You can see the impact that you had on people in the room just from the things that were shared. Where do you want to be on your journey ultimately? So we're right here right now. We're on rung 3. That's where you decide where you want to go from here. From there, the next step becomes engagement. So you have to decide how you want to get involved. One missing rung is back. Once you become engaged, don't do what I did. Once you become engaged, then you have a choice. You come to a proverbial fork in the road. You have to then determine, do I want to be an ally or do I want to be an advocate? Those are 2 separate things. Allyship is more passive. I'll make the donations. I'll support the causes. I'll buy the t-shirts. I'll do all those things. But I might do it from the comfort of my own home. That's completely okay. Your choice. An advocate is someone who is publicly out championing the causes of others. Publicly out championing the causes of others. Those are two separate forks. You will come to them multiple times in life. The decision is yours, and neither one of them are wrong. Look around the room. If you identify as the majority population in the room, you now have a responsibility on your DEI journey to determine how you will support those who are not in the majority population. That's where allyship and advocacy comes in. Do I want to be an ally and be there to support? Do I want to be an advocate where I'm out front leading the charge? Choice is yours. And again, neither of them are wrong. But that's the responsibility of the majority population. It is not the underrepresented group's responsibility to solve the problem for the majority. That's counterproductive. Make sense? So as you're going on this journey, think about the role that you want to play. And remember, no choice you make is wrong as long as you make a choice. All right? So we'll slide this back in. Allyship and advocacy. There we go. Adam, you did a good job on this. And then the last piece becomes the most difficult, but the most fun. We reach a point where we are recognized as an ally or an advocate. Now, we don't get to make that choice. The underrepresented groups that we support tell us if we're an ally or an advocate. We just do the work. But you reach that point, you're engaged, you're doing the work. You get to decide what comes next for you. You get to ideate. You get to build. You get to guide your own course on your DEI journey. And you get to pull others along with you. It's not growth until you're ready to share it with others. So continuous growth means that we have to be willing to learn and let's try that again. We have to learn and my people. All right, there we go. So let's go back to our questions real quick. How does Worthington Industries define diversity? Somebody shout it out. Diversity is a fact. How do we define inclusion? Action, my people. All right. What's one immediate benefit of creating an inclusive environment? One quick benefit. Love it. How does psychological safety help our business? Winning performance. What I hear over here? Minimize injuries. Love it. What are the 4 pillars of our DEI strategy? Workplace, workforce, community, and I heard the last one over here, partners. Awesome job. You all have been amazing. We've got a couple minutes left. What questions can I answer for you? How do I start meetings? I've got a few. I've been doing this a while. That's a fair question. There are a couple of things that I like to do. One, sometimes I like to use the wheel, and I'll just ask people, let's go around the room and think of one thing that's impacting us and share it. Might be a little more intimate. In other meetings, I've asked a unique question that I will share with all of you. Some of you may have even heard me do this. I'll ask people, especially ones that I haven't met before, how does your family cook rice? Now, it seems like a super weird question, right? But rice plays a role in nearly every culture's food supply. And we all make it different. And it's just really cool to think about how people are impacted when you say, hey, how's your family cook rice? Oh, wait, I never thought about it. And then you get 20 different responses, and everybody says, well, I thought we all cooked it the same way. No, we don't. We don't. So it's different. And it might even be different depending on what you're cooking. Who knows? So hopefully that answers your question. What else? Yes, sir.
I'm coming.
The mic is coming.
So first off, thank you. This is all very exciting. But there may be some people who, even after hearing this presentation, they're still doubters.
Yeah.
What would you say to those people? And if I were to come across, or anybody of us who would come across those, would you empower us to respond to them in any particular way?
I don't believe in creating draft responses. It's an awesome question. You're absolutely empowered to have that conversation. But my conversation will be more question-based. What is it that you're doubting? What is it that leaves you on the fence? But more so than anything, our actions are going to speak for themselves. So folks can doubt. They always will. I mean, think about it. If it was as simple as pointing out that you can become more productive and profitable by leveraging a diverse team, Worthington Industries wouldn't need me, and I'd be looking for a new career path. I'm okay with that. But the truth is, we're not going to convince everybody. So assess. Are they really a doubter and they need some motivation to take that first step? Or is this a situation where we let our actions speak for themselves and let the benefits do the talking for us? Does that sound fair, Brandon? Yes. Awesome. We got time for one more because I want to leave you some table time. Jen Savage.
Probably loud enough, I don't need this. But so many of us in this room are not necessarily managers. So managers have a opportunity just by the role of their position to create psychological safety and start some of these questions.
Yes.
But as an individual contributor, what is one small thing we can take back into the workplace, in the facility, that they can do just to change a bit, start conversations, and create a little bit of psychological safety as an individual contributor?
I love it. Don't you, when your partner just like throws one out there, you can just line up for it? I love it. Thank you, Jen. Great question. Here's the cool part about what I do. DEI is the one job that you can add to anybody's job function. So if you're in the breakout session with me later, you're going to hear me talk about a concept of learning to lead from where you sit. You do not have to be a manager to create an inclusive culture and environment. You can start these conversations. You interact with people on a daily basis. You're working next to people. You're on break with people. You might be the space that they come up and they want to talk to, which is why we want to make sure you have these stickers. Put them wherever you want. Make them prominent. Make a sign that says, "Ask me about this." Because you're the first ones that have seen it. But as an individual contributor, you have the exact same responsibility to go out and ensure that your teammates feel supported, that you are asking these questions of your teammates, that you are taking that step as a developing leader to say, I might not be a manager, but I can make sure that my team is successful. This is still on me. And if I can get one person to join me, that lightens the load. And if they can get one person to join us, that lightens the load until everybody's having this conversation. But don't let anyone tell you that as an individual contributor, this is a manager's responsibility. My job is the coolest because anybody can do it. You just got to want to. So if you want to make this a part of your daily routine, then start to think of icebreakers. Start to think of how you would respond to questions. Start to think of ways that you can incorporate this into your daily meetings. Make it a part of who you are. That's what it means to lead from where you sit.